So welcome back to day 3 of Breakthrough from Stuck to Success, where we want to help you conquer your emotions so that you can conquer your life. And today we are talking about how to make the win inevitable. I'd love for you to type into the chat where it is that you are watching us from. Are you online on Facebook? Are you on Zoom? Go ahead and type that into the chat. And are you watching this as live or as a recording? We would love to know. Now, for those of you that are on Facebook, I just wanted to make sure that you knew that you are welcome to this party, and we are so glad to have you. But when you register, you will actually get access to a workbook that will offer you a worksheet that we're going to be talking a lot about today that will be very helpful in making the win inevitable. And in addition to that workbook, you're also going to have access to our group coaching call that happens immediately after this. And you will also get a free ebook and a complimentary clarity call with your coach. And so we invite you to register. Here's all that you get. And you also will have lifetime access to the recordings. These events are going to be recorded inside of our Microshift Masters group all the way through next Friday. So you have a week to catch the recording again if you would like to listen to something again. But when you register, you will have lifetime access to the recordings. So if you did not get anything else from the other days, I have been saying this over and over and over. The one thing I hope you will take away from this week is the knowledge, the belief system that you do not have to stay stuck. Whatever area of your life you might be feeling stuck in, whether it's your physical health, whether it's your career, whether it's relationships, whether it's financial, whatever area it might be, you don't have to stay stuck. And this week, we're providing you with the tools to get unstuck. On the first day, we talked a little bit about why we're stuck. And we talked about letting go of any guilt or shame surrounding being stuck. And we talked about how there are stages of change and we kind of fluctuate back between each of the stages. We talked about how so much of what we do is automatic. And more importantly, we talked about how what we know does not necessarily dictate what we do. And because we know what to do, go ahead and type a no down into the chat if you know what to do, but you've been in a place where you haven't done what you know. And I am guilty as charged, chair, okay? But when you know what to do and you don't do what you know, that's where we get stuck in the trap of guilt and shame. And that is toxic. And that's where it keeps you stuck there, okay? So we want to release that guilt and shame from the knowledge that knowing what to do does not translate into doing what you know. Actually, what drives the bus, okay, what controls what you do more often than not is your emotions. And so yesterday on day 2, we talked a little bit, here we go. We talked about how our emotions are driving the bus on day 1. And on day 2, we talked about how we can actually take back control from our emotions when we honor our emotions, okay? And we do that, and we can control the outcomes in our lives, even though we can't control the events in our lives, but we can control the outcomes by changing the response, okay? And when we can become intentional about our responses instead of reactional, right? Which is that emotional knee-jerk reaction, right? We can actually move towards what we want no matter what hits us in life, okay? And yesterday we talked about 3 steps to take back control from our emotions, right? First of all, we have to identify who's driving the bus at any one given moment in time. And then once you identify who's driving the bus and you realize that more often than not, it's your emotions, we need to suspend judgment. And then we need to move into the challenge phase, which is to give yourself permission to feel whatever you're feeling, and then to experience your feelings through to completion, which we talked about yesterday as identifying the sensations on your body and then vocalizing or moving in a way that allows that emotion to move through you, because emotions are energy in motion, right? So once we've stopped and once we've challenged, we can then make a rational choice because we've allowed ourselves to experience the emotion, and the emotion will no longer hijack, okay? The one thing we know that does not work is when we try to negotiate logic with emotion. When we start telling our emotions, no, I can't have the cookies. No, I can't have the ice cream. No, I can't buy the purse, whatever it is, okay? Because that's our logic trying to negotiate with emotions, and emotions don't speak the language of logic, okay? And that very often doesn't work. But if you just allow yourself to experience the emotion without having to numb that emotion with food, with watching movies, TV, with shopping, with doing other dysfunctional things, okay? When you allow yourself to feel it, the truth of the matter is that that feeling will go away pretty quickly. It's scary to allow ourselves to feel uncomfortable feelings, thinking we're going to have to just sit with it. But the truth of the matter is that if you do it right, that feeling will go away within 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. And so that's the challenge piece. Once you've allowed yourself to feel it, then the logic can take back over and you can revisit your goal. And then you can make the very next best choice that can move you towards your goal. So we talked about how a lot of times people are stuck because they give up on their goals because they're in that phase of demoralization where they don't believe their goal is possible. And we talked about how the antidote to that is hope and surrounding yourself with people that have what you want, whatever area that might be. So we talked about identifying who's driving the bus. And then we talked about allowing yourself to feel the emotions so the emotions don't hijack your goals. And today we're going to talk about how to control your emotions so that you can use those emotions that drive your actions to drive you in the direction that you want to go. Okay. And I want to underscore, okay, that we talked about yesterday, the idea of honoring your emotions and allowing yourself to experience the emotions, and that still stands. Even in light of the awareness now, we're going to talk about how you can control your emotions. It's never about ignoring what you're experiencing, and it's never about sweeping it under the rug. It always begins with acknowledgement and honoring of what you're experiencing, and then understanding that you have the power to shift that, like to literally shift how you feel. So I'd love for you to type into the chat, what are some of the things that make you upset? Okay. I know that one of my big pet peeves is standing in line. Nothing drives me more crazy than standing in line, or waiting in traffic, or it feels like I'm wasting my life, right? I'd love for you to type down into the chat, what are some of the things that make you upset? Well, today I want to reveal to you that the truth of the matter is that no matter what you think makes you upset, the only person that can control how you feel is you. The only person that can make me upset is me. And it isn't standing in line that's making me upset. It's what I'm telling myself about standing in line. Like I said, it feels like I'm wasting my life. So when I tell myself that story, that makes me upset. And so therefore, I am the one that upsets myself. So when we are able to choose the story that we're telling ourselves, we are able to control how we feel. And I want to share Amrita's story. She actually shared her story a couple of months ago, and it is such a powerful example of how we have control over how we feel. So I'm gonna have her share her story on this video. Welcome back. My name is Donnie Alvarenga, and I'm excited to be chatting with one of my clients and new friends, Amrita, about how it is that we win, right? This whole week, we're talking about breaking through from stuck to success. And I know that in the past, whenever I felt stuck in any area of my life, whether it was in building a business, whether it was losing the weight, I would say, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what to do. Give me the checklist and I'll do it. But then I found myself frustrated because I had the checklist and I wasn't doing it, right? And so how is it that we win? How to win? That's going to be the topic that we're going to be talking about today. And how to win is not a checklist. How to win is how we control that narrative inside our head. And I invited Amrita to join us today because she recently won in her head just this past weekend. And I was wondering if she'd be willing to share her story. So thanks for joining us, Amrita.
Happy to be here.
So tell us a little bit about what happened over this past weekend.
So just to give you a little background, I recently got divorced, and we are kind of working on our parenting plan where I now have my son every other weekend. Every other weekend he's with his dad. And this past weekend, he was with his dad. So here I was and it was Friday night. It always seems to be that the first night is always a little hardest, a little bit of the hardest because the house is so quiet. My son is about 3 years old. You get used to the noise, and sometimes that silence in itself can just be so loud. And I remember I was sitting there on Friday night, sitting on the couch, and I was just kind of in my feelings a little bit and just feeling very sad and a little lonely. I missed him so much. And it got to the point where I said to myself, and I said, Amrita, think about where you are right now in this moment, right? Time is a commodity. You don't usually get this sort of time for yourself. What can you do for this time for you? And I asked myself, what is it that I need in this moment? And when I stopped and I asked myself that question, the answer was very clear because as a mom of a 3-year-old, what I needed was rest. And so at that moment, I said, you know what? I'm going to make myself a cup of herbal tea. I'm going to go in my room. I'm going to read a little bit and relax. And I'm going to get some sleep because I really need it. And it took that moment of me just reflecting on the gift that I had in that moment instead of going down the negative Nancy route of, gosh, I miss my son. It's so quiet here. Maybe I should, find another distraction. But when I asked myself what I needed, the answer was clear. So I went in my room, I drank my herbal tea, I read a few pages of a book that I had kind of started and stopped, and I was able to kind of get through some good pages. And then I felt relaxed and I felt the sleep coming on. And I'll tell you, that night I had about 7 to 8 hours of solid rest and sleep. And I woke up the next day just feeling so refreshed and so good. And I'm so happy that in that moment, Friday night, I chose to change the narrative for myself. And it's very powerful, that shift in mindset that occurs when you sometimes have to force yourself to ask yourself the right questions. And the big question for me is, what is it that I need? Because it is okay to put yourself first sometimes.
Oh my
So
goodness. Is that good or is that good? Okay. So she had every reason to be like a little bit down, right? So she's going through a divorce. She's heading into the weekend by herself. She doesn't have her son, right? And she noticed that she was beginning down a spiral and she paused. She used the technique stop, challenge, choose. But this is what's really powerful is she said, wait a minute. What do I really need right now? Right. And so instead of looking at it as a woe is me, I don't have my son, life isn't the way that I expected. Okay. She could have held on to that story. She decided to look at it in a completely different way, which was, I have some free time. And all of a sudden it was a gift instead of a hurt, a pain. Okay. The situation did not change. But what changed was the story she told herself in her head. And that's what we're going to talk about today is how do we do that? How can we do that? We're going to talk about a framework. Let's see here if I can get out of here. Okay. And we're going to talk about a framework that you can follow so that you can flip the script for yourself. Okay. And learn to control your feelings. So everything in life has two parts to it. There's number one, the fact, and then number two, the fiction. Okay. So if we look at this picture in the middle of the screen, we can see, a fact is something that can be recorded with a camera. So if you look at that picture, you can see that there are eyes, a pair of eyes looking across the way. Okay. So that is the fact. What are some stories we can tell ourselves about that fact? Okay. We can tell ourselves, oh, look, she's looking at me, so she's paying attention to me. Is it possible that that story is not true? It's possible. And yet when we tell ourselves that story that she's looking at me, so therefore she's paying attention to me, how does that make you feel? Okay. Or you can look at that picture and you can say, she has a blank stare on her face. She's not even listening to me. Same exact fact, two separate stories, and it changes completely how you feel. Okay. That is where your power is at, is learning to make the meanings or choose the meanings that our brain makes in your favor, because our minds are meaning making machines. Okay. They look at every fact and they tell a story about the fact. And it requires us to stop and really analyze, what is the fact? When I started practicing this was really, really hard to separate fact from fiction, because some of the fiction, some of the stories I had been telling myself for so long that it felt like fact, right? But when I realized that I could change the story, I could change how I felt. So even as I was telling you guys, it drives me crazy to stand in line, right? Because I tell myself that I'm wasting my life. But when I tell myself, oh my goodness, I have like 3 minutes to meet somebody that's standing in line around me. I have like 3 minutes to get to know another human being. All of a sudden, I get so excited. All of a sudden, it's no longer the end of the world. It's no longer aggravating. It's not a pain. It's now, I have an opportunity now to get to know somebody, or I have an opportunity now to catch up on my messages, people sending me messages or whatever, or I have an opportunity now to continue learning a Korean lesson. I'm learning Korean. So I get to choose the narrative that will help, that will control the way I feel, right? And if I can control the way I feel, then I can control the actions, right? Because if our emotions control our actions, if we can control our emotions, we can control the actions and therefore the outcomes. So remember that 40 to 90% of what we do is unconscious. Remember, we talked about that below the surface of the ocean, right? All of this is happening below the surface. You don't even realize you're telling yourself a story about something, which is what makes it so difficult to split apart, which is one of the reasons why it's so important that you partner with somebody that knows how to break it down, so that they can walk you through the situations, so that you can connect with your coach and say, I'm really upset about something that happened today, and I'm having a hard time letting go of the ice cream in my head. And your coach is going to be able to help you break it down. What were the facts? What are the stories you're telling yourself? What are some of the other stories we can tell ourselves? Okay. So this is what's important that we understand that's happening below the surface. Okay. Our thoughts create the feelings. Our feelings dictate the actions. Our actions lead to the outcome. And remember, we mentioned that it's the not doing the actions that keep us stuck, right? So if we want to control the action, it's not enough to say, this is what I have to do. We've got to control a feeling, which means we've got to become aware of the thought, because that's where we can shift. Now, what happens is that actions lead to outcomes, and outcomes kind of create evidence that support our beliefs, and our beliefs lead back to the thoughts. Okay. So what happens if you've, for example, tried to lose weight before? That's an action that you've tried to do, and the outcome was you did not lose. So then what does the belief tell you? Maybe I can't do it. So then when you start thinking, maybe I can't do it, then everything that comes at you, you're looking at through that filter, and your thoughts are going to say, I'm never going to be able to achieve my goal. And that's going to make you feel guilty. It's going to make you feel deflated, demoralized, all the things, which means you might not want to try again. Okay. Do you see how that becomes a vicious cycle? Okay. But if we're able to change the story, we're able to change how we feel. And then we're able to change what we do, and we're able to change the outcome. Remember that our brain gives meaning to things. That does not mean it is true. That's why I call it fiction. Because as I mentioned to you, there are two eyes looking at you. That does not mean that that person is listening to you. That does not mean that that person is even cares about what you're saying. Or it can mean that they really, really do care. It's two completely different stories. And the question is, which one do you choose to embrace? Which one do you choose to move from? Okay. But this is the truth. If you can change your thoughts, you can change your life. And if we're able to separate the thoughts from the feelings, okay, the facts from the stories, from the feelings, then we can take back a lot of power. But as I mentioned, this takes practice. Okay, it's not going to happen overnight just because you heard it today. Okay, it takes practice. And I'm going to invite you to have grace with yourself, and I'm going to invite you to seek help. Okay, because we are here to support you in practicing this and mastering this. So just as we talked about our feelings yesterday, it's important that we talk a couple of truths about our thoughts. Okay, you are not your thoughts. And if you've never spent much time thinking about your thoughts, it's kind of, that whole idea of thinking about my thoughts hurt my brain for a long time before I could wrap my brain around it. Okay. Because I thought I was the one that was generating my thoughts, but that's not the truth. My brain was generating thoughts. I get to choose whether I believe that thought or not. I get to challenge that thought. Okay. So when you understand that you are not your thoughts, that's when it gives you permission to challenge and understand that your thoughts are not always true, which means you can challenge. Now, at some point in your life, your thoughts were programmed. Okay. And because they were programmed, that's why it's so hard to identify them as a thought and as not you and as not true. But all of that is true, that you are not your thoughts. Not every thought you have is true, and that your thoughts are programmed, and you can change them. You can reprogram them. Okay. So how do we do this? Okay. So whenever there is something that happens that makes you upset, okay, I'm going to give you an example. When we were coming out of the pandemic, my church hosted a fall festival. Relevant because we just did our fall festival, but this was a couple years back, and I was wearing a mask and I was part of the reception. I was there greeting people in, and I saw a friend of mine that I had not seen in a long time, and she chatted with the person next to me, and I said, "Oh my goodness, the kids are so big," and she barely looked at me and she just moved on. And I thought, well, how rude was that? I hadn't seen her in a long time, and she didn't even greet me. She didn't even acknowledge me. And she just moved right on along. And my blood pressure rose, and I started feeling like tightness in my chest, and I was clenching my jaw, and I was upset, right? And then I stopped and I did this. Okay, so I thought about the facts. Okay, so what were the facts? The facts were, I saw a friend. I saw somebody that I had not seen in a long time. So remember, facts are something you can record with a camera. So whether it was a long time or not, that's story. You can't record that. But the fact was, I saw somebody. Okay. The fact was, I was wearing a mask. The fact was, she did not say hello to me. The fact is, she just walked on by. Okay. Now, when I stopped to look at the story I told myself was that she was ignoring me, and that she was on purpose avoiding me, right? But then when I stopped and I thought about it, I was like, the third step here is, does the story serve your goal? Okay. My goal is to have a good relationship with my friends, right? And the idea that she was ignoring me on purpose does not serve my goal, right? So I thought, okay, what other story could I tell myself? And as I thought about it, I was like, oh, I was wearing a mask. Could it be that she did not recognize me? Okay. And all of a sudden, like that, it changed how I felt. Now, I did connect with her. I was like, hey, girl, I saw you at the fall festival. Did you see me? And she's like, no, I didn't. And I was like, I wondered about that because I had my mask on. Right. And she's like, I didn't even see you. I said, I was at the reception. She's like, no way. Okay. Now, had I held on to my belief that she was ignoring me and that she was, being rude to me intentionally, then I would not have approached her and said, hey, I saw you at the fall fest. And I wouldn't have clarified the whole thing. And our relationship may have been ruined because I probably would have pulled away because my thoughts lead to my feelings and my feelings lead to my actions. And I decided I was not going to allow my feeling to control me. So I took a step back into the thoughts and the beliefs. And because of that, we are still friends, right? And so in the workbook that you have in the workbook that we provided for those of you that have registered, there is this worksheet. And so it gives you step-by-step guidelines on how to work through whenever you notice your emotions are flaring. whatever emotions might be. Okay. So you describe the situation, you allow yourself to feel the feelings, right? And then once you've gone through the stop, challenge, choose, once again, we always want to honor your feelings. You always want to allow yourself to experience what you're experiencing, but then not get stuck there, right? Once you've allowed yourself to experience it, that's when your logic can take back over. And only after you've got logic back on, can you outline facts and can you recognize that there was a story? Okay. And once you know what the facts were and what the story is, then go back to your goal. What is your goal? In the situation, what was it that bothered you? How did that not align with your goal? Okay. And then you ask yourself, does the story inspire you to pursue your goal? And then outline other possible stories and get creative. A story is a story. It is fictional, whichever way you put it. Choose the one that serves you. Choose the one that will allow you to move on towards your goal. And then choose an action that you're going to take based on the story that you have decided to embrace. Now, I shared with you guys an example of my friend, and so we're not going to break down the other one that I just had there. But in addition to learning to decipher between fact and fiction, it's also important that we learn the power of yet. Okay, because let's go back to the example of I've tried to lose weight and I didn't. Now I have evidence of the fact that I can't. Okay. So when you say I can't, that's first of all a story. Okay. The fact is you may have tried something. The fact is the number on the scale did not change. Okay. Those are facts. The story you're telling yourself is that you are not capable. What's another possible story? Maybe you didn't have the right plan. Maybe you didn't have enough support. Maybe you didn't know something that needed to be known. But the point of the matter is I have not been able to lose weight. And then when you tack on that word yet, it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. Because when you say, I have not been able to lose weight, period, that's pretty discouraging. But when you say yet, then that means there is the possibility. And as long as you have hope, as long as you don't give up, you can do whatever you set your mind to. Because remember, you don't have to stay stuck. Feelings are the observations of our emotions, and how we manage our emotions and use feelings to become aware is the key to taking control of our lives. And that is from Dr. A in our Habits of Health system. So remember, you do not have to stay stuck. No matter what area in your life you have felt stuck in, you do not have to stay stuck. The question is, what is it that you're looking for more of? Are you looking for more support or accountability, time, income, health, energy, weight loss, community? What is it that you are looking for more of where you're feeling a little stuck? Well, what we want to do is we want to invite you to join us back next Monday evening so that we can talk about some simple tools that we have available to us that we can help you move towards your breakthrough. I invite you in the meantime, from today till next week, that you connect with the person that invited you so that you can go over that circle of life wheel that is in your workbook so we can talk about what is it that you're looking for more of in your life. What areas of your life are you feeling stuck in? Because we would absolutely love to help you break through. And for those of you that have not yet registered, you can access the link on the screen so that you can get your workbook. You can get access to that worksheet that we talked about in terms of working through your emotions and taking back control over the stories you're telling yourself and taking back control over how you feel. Okay. And it also offers you a chart where you can learn how to identify the sensations on your body and how to vocalize different ideas on how to vocalize. And so I invite you to register so that you can get that. And you can also get the free ebook, Stop, Challenge, Choose.